In this video, we're going to look at basic warehousing. So, a warehouse inside of Business Central is set up as a location. So we're going to go to Locations, and we're going to create a new location, and we're going to call this the Lodge. And normally I'd fill in the address and all of those sorts of things, but for setting this up to begin with as a basic warehouse, I don't actually have to do this. But what I can do here is that I can set up even a basic warehouse and say that bins are mandatory. So I actually have indicated that that bins are actually mandatory for everything here. And if I want to, I can also require a pick and require a put away document, that these documents actually be registered. For this demonstration, I'm going to leave these just blank, but I could actually require those kinds of things. And as part of setting up a warehouse, what I actually want to do is I want to set up bins for this. So there is a function here for setting up bins. And one of the things that we can do is that we can just manually go in here and assign a bin number. I'm going to say this is A-0001 and give it a description of A-0001. When you're using basic warehousing, it does not allow zones, so A-0002. And I could just, I could continue to buzz through and do these, A-0002, and I could continue to manually enter these items in here. One of the other things that we can do with this, of course, is that we also can look at bin content. So if I go to the related area here and go to bin content for this, I can see that what I could do is I could actually affix an item number in here. So I could say that any one of these items that I want to, but let's just take our webbing for example. We were using this webbing a while ago, and I could set this up so that I have a minimum quantity here. I always want to have at least 1,000 inches of this available, and I replace it with 36,000. And this is the min-max levels that we have that we would normally then be using to set up our replenishment. So this, in this specific bin, is where this webbing is going to be stored. This is our finished goods. We're going to be drawing from this bin. And then I can set up min-max levels out here and run a replenishment. So when this falls below 1,000 inches of material, this would then go on and replenish it with 36,000 more. So one of the first things that you're going to have to do in order to use these is that you're actually going to have to go out and you're going to have to set up warehouse employees. And so I'm going to set up myself. I'm actually Alta Vista here. In location, the Lodge. And I'm going to make this my default location. So in order for me to, or anybody else, to use these warehouse locations, we basically need to be set up as a warehouse user. So I'm now set up as a warehouse user out here, and I can do other functions. So the next thing that we need to do is to look at inventory posting setups for the Lodge. And so we need an inventory posting group. We need inventory accounts, an inventory interim account, WIP, a work in process account, and then some variance accounts. But because we're using FIFO for all of our items at the moment, we don't need variance accounts in order to make this work. So in our simple example here, what we're going to do, we're going to close this up and just go to items for a second. And let's assume that I have a negative 49 of this particular item here. So I'm going to open this up, And I want to copy this number. And what I want to do is I'm going to put some of these in inventory for us. So I'm going to go to an item journal. And in the item journal, what I want to do is I'm going to put, I'm actually going to just make this a positive adjustment. I'm just going to adjust these guys up. It's going to be that item number that I had. And what I want to do with these is I'm going to put these in my new location called the Lodge. And I'm going to select a bin here where I'm going to put them, and I have 3 available. So I'm going to put them in this first bin. And I'm going to put 100 of these in stock. That's my quantity. Let's see what else we have on here that we need. We might want to put a unit cost on these guys. In this particular case, I'm not. But if I knew what my unit cost was and it was different than what I ordinarily have, I could put a unit cost on these. So I'm simply going to go to this function called post and print. I'm going to just post this item for us. And it says the journal lines were posted successfully. So from this item journal, I can do various types of transactions here. I can do positive and negative adjustments, purchases, sales, all sorts of transactions. I'm going to exit out of here for a moment. I'm going to go to my item. And what I want you to notice now is that we now have 51 in stock. We had fewer before. So I just added 100 of these, and we had a negative quantity of these ahead of time. So if I look at availability here by location, I can go out and see that I had a negative 49 that are in an unspecified location. They're not in any real location set up. And I have 100 of these available in the Lodge. So the net difference here gives me my 51 items that I'm looking at. So I'm going to go back out to the item journal for just a moment. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing again here. I'm going to make a positive adjustment for this item. And this time, I'm not going to give it a location. Well, let's give it a location, just for grins and giggles. We'll tell it that it's the Lodge. And we're not going to notice it defaulted to the last place that I had placed these before, previously, into bin A1. I'm going to leave this blank for just a moment. I'm going to tell it a quantity of 50 here. And now what I'm going to try and do is to actually post this transaction. And it says the bin does not exist, identification field, value, yada, 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 the Lodge. And it gives me a bin code of being blank. This will not allow me to do a transaction in this location code without a bin. So I'm prohibited from doing that. I cannot do any kind of transaction out here in the location, the Lodge, unless I assign a bin code to it. So that's because bins are mandatory for all transactions as set up and defined on the location card for the Lodge. So the next thing that I'd like to do is to actually create a purchase order for these. We typically buy these items by creating a purchase order. So I'm going to tell it that this is a new purchase order, and I'm going to use vendor, let's see here, let's use 40,000 for this. And I want to make sure that there's no prepayment stuff set up on this. Change my term code to something that's normal. There's no prepayment set up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up a purchase of this item, and I'm going to make it from the Lodge. And notice it again knows that this is the last place that this bin came in, so it will actually set this up for me as going into this particular bin. And I can tell it that I want to purchase, I don't know, maybe 10 of these. And my unit of measure code here, I need a direct unit cost for these guys, so they're $250. And if I slide across here a little bit further, no, okay, there's no other mandatory field that's out here. So I've created a purchase order for these items now, and this is defaulting into this bin code for me. So this bin A001 is a bin that I've assigned to this specific item number. This is its designated bin. So when these are received, I can actually change this bin to something else. So if you take a look over here, there is a quantity to receive, and there's a setup in the purchases and payable setup that says, hey, default the quantity to receive to whatever the original quantity is. Many companies want this to default to nothing so that the end user has to fill this in. If they're receiving 5, for example, they'd go out here and put 5 on here instead of 10, and it would only receive 5. When it defaults these numbers in, there's a possibility that somebody will just have the wrong value here. They really were supposed to get 5, but they actually got 10. So this is a matter for each company to decide how they want to do this. But if I wanted to, when these are being received, I could put these into some sort of a bulk bin here. So I could actually go in and say, hey, instead of putting these in their default bin, I want to put these in bin 2A, or A0002. So I'm going to put them in the bulk bin, and I'm going to move these later on. Now I have a couple of options here. One of them is that I can, if I know what my vendor invoice number is already, I can actually enter it in here. And if not, I can just receive these items, and then I can invoice it when when the invoice actually arrives from the vendor. These things happen typically; they don't always happen at the same time. So when I get done populating this the way that I want it, I can simply go to posting. I can pick post. So I have a selection here of either to simply receive these or to receive and invoice. I'm going to pick receive here. And before I do that, I'm going to cancel this for just 1 second. When you're using directed putaways and picks, typically what happens is everything is received into a receiving bin, and then from the receiving bin they're actually put away. So we could create a receiving bin here where the receiver always puts these into the same receiving bin, and then we move them from receiving to whatever bulk bin we want to store them in. Not an unusual way to actually do this. So I'm going to go out here now, and I'm going to pick post again, and I'm going to say just to receive. I'm going to click OK, and the program has now received 10 of these, and they haven't been invoiced yet. So we haven't sent them over to payables to be paid for, but these have now been received, and they're actually in inventory. So I'm going to exit out of here. I'm going to go back to my inventory, and I'm going to take a look at that item that I've been working on, which is this guy. And if we open this up, we now have 61 on hand. And if we go to related information, availability by location, we'll see that that's basically increased us by another 100. Now we have 110 that's in this location. And if I exit out of here and I go to related information, warehouse, and bin content, now I can see that I have 100 of these in A1, and I have 10 of them in our A2 location. So I can see exactly where my location is where my inventory is by using the bin content feature. So I received the invoice from my vendor a couple of days later. What I can do here is that I can go back out to my purchase orders. I can go into that purchase order that I had. This has already been received, but I have to invoice it yet. So I can enter in my vendor's invoice number here, which I already have done, and I can simply go to post. And I can either invoice now or receive an invoice, but I've already received. So it says the order posted successfully. Do you want to open the posted invoice? Again, when a purchase order is completed, it creates a purchase invoice for it, and I can navigate to that purchase invoice by just clicking yes. So this is the posted purchase invoice for this transaction just took place. This is out here for historical reasons. So another function that we do in the warehouse on a pretty regular basis is to move things from place to place. So I can do an internal movement. So this is a movement inside of my warehouse itself. I can pick new. I can just let this assign a number. And what I can do down here is that I can drill into my items, and I can see, for example, I have this 1953-W here. It's in bin location A2, and I could move this from A2, and I could actually move it over to A1. And I'm going to move all 10 of them. Well, let's just move 5 of them. So I'm moving 5 of these guys, and then I can actually post this transaction and I could have this inventory, this internal movement worksheet with 10, 12, 15 lines here. And then what I can do is I create an inventory movement, and this actually creates the inventory movement for me. And then what I do is that I have someone go out and they actually physically move this. So I can pull up my inventory movements. There is the new one that I've created here. So I'm moving this from 5 of these from A2 to A1. And so this is actually where the movement really takes place. So at this point, all we really need to do is to process this. We pick register movement, say yes, and quantity to handle needs to be processed. So we got quantity to handle of 5, register the movement, and it's processed this. This is now completely done. So this allows us to move things around the inventory system and get them basically to where we need to do to move them from bin to bin. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, remember to click below and subscribe for more.